Hey y'all, I am back with another Astro Crossword, and today I want to play this video that I watched the other day. It's about this guy named Treadwell, and it very much exemplifies the saying, F around and find out. And this is what this guy definitely did. And a big part of it is due to him having Jupiter in Virgo. So let me start playing this puzzle and then I'll just start this documentary. I won't be able to get through the whole documentary because it's an hour long. But I'm going to play this documentary so you'll hear it in the background as I'm working on this crossword puzzle. And I'll be discussing some of the things in his chart that explains why he made this life-threatening decision. Now, again, he has Jupiter in Virgo. And people with Jupiter and Virgo, they could find themselves in situations where, yes, they F around and find out. So Virgo can cause someone to meddle. Virgo is a very meddlesome sign. And if you have Jupiter in Virgo, you might be very meddlesome. You can't leave well enough alone. You start to interfere in situations that's not even warranted. So let me start this puzzle. Now, Treadwell, he was born on the 29th. He's a 29
Who seems to be an
Taurus.
authentic transcription, the primary source being the journalist Nick Jans, who
Let me start it from the beginning. So he's a 29 birth number, and 29 can deal with high pressure situations, which is what he found himself in, or what he put himself in. He put himself in high pressure situations. He basically was trying to befriend bears, but he had a hidden agenda. And this documentary is really good because it gets into the psychology of this man and what made him tick and what led him to commit this foolish act. All right, so this puzzle is called Check Back.
How are you? Don't you do that. Don't you do that. Knuckle. This is Timothy Treadwell. He's someone who seemed to believe he was a very special person on a very special mission. Today, we're going to watch some footage of him and talk about the narcissistic need to believe in one's specialness, even if it is a vulnerable narcissistic need. And we're also going to talk about regressions into childlike states and addiction.
Okay, he talked about regressions into childlike states, and in the beginning you can hear Tim Treadwell's voice. So it's a clip of him because he basically chronologized or cataloged his exploits in bear country in Alaska. So there's a lot of footage of him messing around with these bears, meddling with these bears, Jupiter and Virgo all day. So him regressing to a childlike state, that's very much dealing with his sun and moon in Taurus, squaring his Uranus and Leo. Leo deals with children. So somebody that has sun and moon squaring Uranus, they could be offbeat in some type of way. They could be weird, strange, and in a childlike way because Uranus is in Leo. Also, he mentioned addiction, and Tim Treadwell had his sun and moon opposing Neptune in Scorpio, and that could deal with hardcore addiction.
Don't do it. It's okay. I love you. 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 I'm sorry. Timothy Treadwell is a tragic figure.
I'm sorry, I had to interrupt. You see how he's saying, I love you, I love you. That's basically Mars and Gemini, sextile Pluto and Leo. Mars and Gemini can cause somebody to repeat themselves, just Gemini, period. And the Leo part, Pluto and Leo's coming, that's the love you part. So the I part, that's Mars and Gemini, him repeating himself over and over again, Gemini. And then Pluto and Leo, that's the love part. I love you, I love you. And that nasally, squeaky voice, that's coming from his sun and moon in Taurus. Taurus is the voice in sesqui-square with Jupiter and Virgo, because Virgo can produce that nasally voice. It can also produce the voice of the soprano, a high-pitched voice, falsetto.
Here. Of course, being a tragic figure does not mean that he's not to blame for his own demise. In ancient Greek tragedies, the hero would always have a fatal flaw, most often hubris, excessive pride. Pride comes before the fall, after all. In the case of Tim Treadwell, his hubris may strike you as particularly stupid or delusional, depending on your disposition, and it was the belief that he could live amongst the grizzly bears in wild Alaska as their friend and as their savior. And he did live among them every summer for 13 years.
Let me stop right there. Him wanting to be their savior. That's very sun conjunct moon opposing Neptune.
Before he was devoured by one. Werner Herzog was the perfect filmmaker to tell this story, what with its tragic and bizarre protagonist, driven by an obsessiveness that Herzog is clearly fascinated by. And I, too, am fascinated by Tim Treadwell and with the documentary Grizzly Man. So I want to lend some interpretations to this story as to what might have driven Tim Treadwell into that grizzly maze and into the delusion of being the savior of the bears and into the death of himself and his girlfriend.
Wow. Do you see that? The word bears. And just as I was typing bears, he mentioned bears. This is what I love about crossword puzzles because you basically experience a lot of synchronicity. So, this documentary is about this man that was meddling with bears. And here it is bears right in the crossword puzzle. You can't make this stuff up. Now, let me identify some of the Aries words. Spar is an Aries word. Again, is an Aries word. And that looks like that's about it. Now, in terms of bears, they would fall under Pisces because they're large animals, but there's other signs that pertain to animals as well. So I'm wondering if Aries could come into play when it comes to bears. I wouldn't say Taurus, because Taurus is more like cows, oxes, yaks, but bears. I'm wondering if like they have some Aryan energy. I wouldn't be surprised. But Pisces just rules the animal kingdom in terms of the large animals. So bears would be included in that.
I'm Andrew Vandervaart, a psychiatrist and neuroscientist, and any opinions expressed in this video are purely my own.
I have no idea if there's a God, but if there's a God, God would be very, very pleased with me. If you could just watch me here, how much I love them, how much I adore them, how respectful I am to them, how I am one of them, and how the studies they give me, the photographs, the video, and take that around for no charge to people around the world. It's good work. I feel good about it. I feel good about myself doing it.
In this case, as often is the case, when people are insisting to this degree that they're good and that they're special and that they're happy, there is a kind of methinks thou dost protest too much.
I want to continue, and I hope I can. I really hope I can. But if not, be warned. I will die for these animals. I will die for these animals. I will die for these animals. Thank you so much for letting me do this.
You hear that? I will die for these animals. I will die for these animals. That's very Mars sextile Pluto. And again, you see how he's repeating himself over and over? Mars and Gemini. Also, his sun and moon opposing Neptune, that's him basically resigning himself over to the death via being attacked by a bear, which is what ultimately happened. So it's like I feel like this is what he wanted ultimately.
So much for these animals, for giving me a life. I had no life. Now I have a life.
There's a desperation.
Him saying he had no life is very sun conjunct moon opposing Neptune and Scorpio. This sensing this void, feeling like you're nothing, worthless, because we're talking about Taurus opposed to Scorpio energy. So that opposition can make one feel worthless.
Here. There's a sense in which his life depends on this sort of calling he believes he's found. And I often find that people that need to insist that they're so special, in fact, feel the opposite, but can never confront that feeling.
Most times I'm a kind warrior out here. Most times I am gentle. I am like a flower. I'm like a fly on the wall, observing, non-committal, non-invasive in any way. Occasionally I am challenged, and in that case, the kind warrior must become a samurai, must become so formidable, so fearless of death, so strong that you will win. You will win. Even the bears will believe that you are more powerful. And in a sense, you must be more powerful if you are to survive.
So notice he cannot help but smile as he voices this conclusion that you must be more powerful than the bears.
In this land with the bear. No one knew that. No one ever friggin' knew that there are times when my life is on the precipice of death and that these bears can bite. They can kill. If I am weak, I go down. I love them with all my heart. I will
On the precipice of death. That's very Sun conjunct Moon opposing Neptune in Scorpio.
protect them. I will die for them, but I will not die at their claws and paws. I will fight. I will be strong. I'll be one of them. I will be the master. I'll be rowdy. Give it to me, baby. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about.
Also, his strange way of speaking, this whole give it to me, baby. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. That's very Mercury in Taurus squaring Chiron in Aquarius. That square can cause somebody to speak in a strange way. You can consider that like stilted speech, even where no, I wouldn't say that's an example of stilted speech, but there's times where he is displaying more stilted speech, but just being odd in terms of the way he's communicating. Yeah, off base, weird, strange.
So one thing we can see with Tim Treadwell is that he seems to be getting a significant amount of ego validation from the fact that he feels he must be more powerful than the bears to be able to survive amongst them when he is occasionally threatened by them. It must mean that he is in some way their master. And what does that mean? Well, that means he's more powerful than one of the most powerful animals in the world.
Right back. Go back.
Now that is stemming from his Mars square Jupiter. So he has Mars in Gemini squaring Jupiter in Virgo. And that can cause him to have this hubris where he thinks he's better than what he is. He overestimates his abilities. He's overly confident.
This is a subadult. This is what happens to them. They work together and they get really powerful. See him just feet away. You just relax. You just relax. I've now proven myself as being able to hold my ground and therefore earning their respect. This is Rowdy the bear, and he's rowdy. He's getting bigger. But that was a challenge, and you have to remain cool in the challenge, in the moment. If you don't, you're dead. They can kill. They can bite. They can decapitate.
What I'm suggesting is that Tim Treadwell has this need to be special. And where does that need come from? It might come from the fact that he doesn't actually feel special. His core feeling is that he is worthless in some way, or that there is some hole in him that needs to be filled.
Yes. And again, that's Sun conjunct Moon in Taurus opposing Neptune in Scorpio. That's that hole that the psychiatrist speaks of. This feeling of worthlessness that this guy is speaking of. This psychiatrist that made this video, he's on point with his assessment because it matches what I see in this guy's chart. Also, Tim Treadwell had Jupiter conjoined to Apollo and Toro. Those are two asteroids. If you have Jupiter conjoined to Apollo, you are very hard-headed. And you will put yourself in situations where you feel like you are like powerful enough to overcome something that's powerful, more powerful than you. And then remember, he was saying, God would be very pleased with me doing this and stuff. That can be seen through Jupiter conjunct Apollo, and Jupiter conjoined the Taureau. That can give him this sense of hyper masculinity, or where he wants to act like he's this tough guy, even though you can tell by the way he's talking and stuff that he's not really tough like that, like he tries to portray. Talking about like he wants to be the master over these animals. That's very Jupiter conjoined to Apollo. And again, remember his Mars is squaring Jupiter. That hubris.
So he needs to believe that he is special and that he has worth. What that need leads to is a belief that he is special. Because if he holds that belief, if the more he believes that he is special, the more he can deny that feeling that he has that he is not actually special, right? So he's chasing filling this hole with the feeling of being special, and he convinces himself cognitively that he is in fact special, because the need leads to that belief that I think reaches the point of delusion in his life.
Delusion. Sun conjunct Moon opposition Neptune. He's living in his own little fantasy world. But eventually, reality caught up to him. But again, I think he resigned himself to this fate. I think this is the way he wanted to go out. But it took years for it to happen.
He was over 10 feet high, don't you? He's a big bear. He's a big bear. A very big bear. Wow.
The first thing I notice about Timothy Treadwell is that his demeanor is quite childlike.
Anyway, he's over here rub-a-dub-dubbing.
Rub-a-dub-dubbing. Again, that childlike demeanor. Sun conjoined to Moon, square Uranus, and Leo. That can deal with somebody that really doesn't ever want to grow up. So they make it so that they really don't have to. They create circumstances where they can still be childlike. Rub-a-dub-dub.
A big bear.
And so that childlike affect, it's a definite contrast to the way Timothy Treadwell wants to present himself. He wants to have this, he wants to see himself and present himself as a kind of rugged Jack London kind of character that's out there, Bear Grylls kind of guy.
There's going to be a number of takes.
Now, Jack London, Bear Grylls, they would be considered survivalists. And Taurus is the sign of the survivalist. So Tim Treadwell had it half right with him having that Taurus stellium, his sun, moon, Mercury, and South Node all in Taurus. But his problem came from that Taurus energy is squaring Chiron and Aquarius. In particular, his South Node and Mercury are squaring Chiron and Aquarius. And what that causes him to do is put his safety at risk due to believing that he is the exception to the rule. That's the Chiron influence. That Aquarius influence can make someone feel like they're superhuman, like the rules don't apply to them. He's a 10 life path number, and that can deal with taking certain risks. That 10 is the wheel of fortune. So eventually your luck is going to run out.
I'm going to do. These are called Wild Timmy Jungle Scenes. We're going to do several takes of each, where I'll do it with a bandana on, maybe a bandana off, maybe two different colored bandanas, some without a bandana, some with the camera being held. Stumbled on that one. Let's do it again.
But in fact, what he looks more like is a kind of Peter Pan out in the wilderness, with these kinds of silly facial expressions and turns of phrase. And it makes me think about Arrested Development. So, stages of psychosocial development are something that are essentially analogous to stages we see in all of biology, right? Developmental stages happen for all organisms throughout their lives. And so in psychiatry and psychoanalysis, there's this analogous idea of psychological stages. Now, Freud had very interesting ones, I think, with the oral and anal and all that kind of stuff, but that's sort of lacking in the kind of pragmatic realism that Erik Erikson's stages have. So I really like the Ericksonian stages. Each of them is defined by the typical chronological age associated with the stage and with the fundamental question that needs to be resolved. And the idea.
So I'm gonna skip through this part because he like breaks down these stages from what the psychologist said, and we're gonna get on to the clips of this guy. This guy was really off his rocker, but again, it's largely due to his sun and moon opposing Neptune, and then also Mercury and his south node squaring Chiron in Aquarius. And then Chiron in Aquarius squaring the Scorpio north node is basically him feeling like he's impervious to death. Like where he's basically feels like, oh, death is not going to apply to him. But at the same time, maybe he felt that way in the beginning, but then maybe as time went on, he did start to resign himself to, okay, yeah, this is how I'm going to die. You could say that's true for most adventurers that do crazy, life-threatening stunts and stuff, like those free climbers. Eventually, your luck is going to run out. But these people press their luck all the time. He also has Venus. I forgot to throw Venus into the mix. So his Mercury, Venus, and South Node in Taurus are squaring Chiron. And with Venus square Chiron in Aquarius, and I don't think this video touches on it, but I remember hearing that he started to eat like bears. I think one time, like, he smeared bear dung all over his body. Because I remember there was this guy in the area, he witnessed him, messing around with the bears, and he like was saying that he stunk to high heaven and all that. So Venus square Chiron, that can cause somebody to not take care of themselves where they can be offensive to other people. They could have weird tastes, weird eating habits, antisocial type of person. And also Venus square Chiron and Aquarius, in particular in Taurus, can deal with where he didn't have respect for nature. And all of those squares involving Chiron and Aquarius and his Taurus energy, that's dealing with where he didn't have respect. He didn't have a reverence for nature. And remember, he was trying to be master over these bears. And I don't like the way he was talking to these bears either.
Arrest is if you don't resolve the goal of that, a lot more dynamism allowed for here with the idea that regression can happen in the face of stress so that you sort of go backwards in time. And, regression is something we see certainly in behaviors, like school-age children themselves will sometimes regress to pre-potty training if they have a major stress. They'll have a period of
I'm sorry, I gotta interrupt him because I'm thinking about this chai tea word. So I remember seeing an Instagram reel where this guy was saying chai tea is redundant. He was like, because chai is tea. So he was just clowning people that say chai tea. So that just made me think of that.
Things like speech, mannerisms, and internally with the way you see the world. So you'll regress to seeing the world the way a child might see the world. Perhaps, let's say, believing that animals are teddy bears, right? Or acting the way that Tim Treadwell acts.
He's a big bear. He's a big bear. A very big bear. Wow. Anyway, he's over here rub-a-dub-dubbing. It's a big bear.
At times like this, when he's saying he was up there rub-a-dub-dubbing, it's very childlike. So his behaviors are very childlike, but I think the way he sees the world is very childlike as well. So I'm immediately thinking there's some reason that he felt inferior from a young age, and that's leading to the insistence that he is not inferior to a pathological degree, as well as often presenting as though he is still a child.
I would be within the physical presence of bears 24 hours a day, 4 months at a time.
This is crazy. This is nuts. These are the most dangerous animals on the face of the earth. And
Wow.
you want to go and put yourself in harm's way 24 hours a day?
I think they've been misunderstood.
How can I believe that if...
First of all, Dateline's Keith Morrison I'll never not smile when I hear his voice. There's something about Keith Morrison's just folksy gruffness. But so we see another thing that living amongst the bears does for Timothy Treadwell. Not only does he have the immediate experience whenever he's able to sort of turn away a bear, and avoid harm, that is an immediate feeling of power. So he has that. Two, he's going to develop this belief that he's actually the only one trying to save the bears, so he has a kind of purpose and cause.
Mhm.
And three, he's getting social validation and celebrity from this lifestyle. So what he's finding is that this pursuit is doing so much for that ego need. But again, this idea that he is now a national celebrity from his summers with the bears kind of contradicts the image of the rough. I would thicker. I would never, because it's getting solved by all of these claims.
I had to speed
He
it up
still
a little
doesn't
bit.
quite know who he
Filled
is.
with
Is he an
joy,
activist?
elate.
Is he an outdoorsman? Is he tough? Is he a sweetheart?
He's a damn fool. That's what
He
he
seems to
is,
be all of these
or
things
was.
without knowing exactly
He
who
fucked
he is.
around and found out.
By a bear that you wouldn't say, "Oh, I made a mistake. I'd like to have a gun."
I would never, ever kill a bear in the defense of my own life. I would not go into a bear's home and kill a bear.
In his final year, the 13th of his Alaskan expeditions,
13.
Treadwell
13 is death. Let me see if he had anything. Oh, I'm almost certain he had something at the 13th degree. Let me see. Yup, his Venus is at the 13th degree, Saturn at the 13th degree, and his Venus is in quincunx with Saturn. That's him keep on going back. Him keep on returning back to where the bears are, going back into nature.
continued in what had become his established practice of first camping in the more open areas of the wildlife reserve and then moving into the thicker brush, which is what he called the grizzly maze, to watch the salmon run of the fall. This year in particular, he had decided to delay his exit by a few weeks, and it's been suggested that this added risk to his already risky behavior, as that is the time of year that bears might become most desperate to put on fat before the winter. In Tim Treadwell's footage from his final expedition, there are two bears in particular, either of which some people have speculated might be the bear that killed and ate him.
Let's
Whether
go.
or
That's
not that's
Aries.
actually the case, I think it is reasonable to suggest these are the types of bears most prone to attack a human, and in fact, Tim Treadwell himself suggests this.
Here on camera with Ole, the big old bear, and the big old grumpy bear, he just took Cracker out of the creek area. There's not a lot of fish here, so you could understand him wanting to have control of the creek. I met him on the pathway the other day after feeling sorry for him, thinking that he was a bit thin, a bit gaunt, and he probably charged me with the intent to probably strike. I know the language of the bear. I was able to deter him from doing that, and I'm fine. But I will tell you something. It is the old bear.
Now, this clip I'm watching right now of him talking, there is a bear in back of him. The only thing that's separating him from the bear are these rocks and this shallow stream. So the bear is very close to him, but this is a perfect pictorial representation of his sun and moon in Taurus opposing Neptune in Scorpio. That is how oppositions basically look. And again, he's in direct line of sight of this bear, but he has his back turned to the bear, which is stupid. But at this point, he's so comfortable around them, he's really like taking these foolish risks. But ultimately, again, it caught up to him, and the bear not only attacked and killed him, he had brought his girlfriend with him. So the bear attacked and killed the woman as well. So that is where the moon comes in. Sun conjunct moon opposing Neptune and Scorpio. Now, if a man has sun conjunct moon as he did, that can make him very much about my woman always has to be by my side. She got to do exactly what I do. We have to be a team. We're like two peas in a pod. So he not only cost his own life with his foolish actions, he cost the life of his girlfriend. I'm going to put up a picture of this image. Let me take a screenshot of it. So you can see what I mean about him being in this opposition. Okay. All right, let me finish this puzzle.
Who's struggling for survival, and an aggressive one at that, who's the one that you must be very careful of. For these are the bears that on occasion do, for survival, kill and eat humans. Could Oli the big old bear possibly kill and eat Timothy Treadwell? What do you think, Oli? I think if you were weak around him, you're going down his gullet, going down the pipe.
We hear Tim Treadwell's notion that he's just sort of friends with the bears. The story he tells of meeting this bear is the kind of story you'd tell about how you met someone at school or something, you know, that you
Damn.
just met him while
Look
you
at
were
that. This word, well, this clue, gobbled down, 64 across, 8 up. That's exactly what the bear, and then you see the word bears in the crossword puzzle. That's exactly what the bear did to Tim Treadwell and his girlfriend. Killed them and gobbled them up. I think he was gobbling them up while they were still alive. Like being attacked and killed by an animal, I would think that's one of the most gruesome deaths. That's crazy. 8 up. And then even Tim Treadwell, he basically said, yeah, you're going down his gullet if you're not strong enough to fight this bear off.
along
Crazy.
the hallway and you kind of felt sorry for him because he seemed out of place.
I met him on the pamphlet the other day after feeling sorry for him, and he promptly charged me with the attempt to probably strike. I know the language of the bear.
And then you also have the part where he wants to feel like he's more powerful than the bears. So, you know, I was able to deter him, and if I were any weaker, he would probably eat me.
I was able to deter him from doing that, and I'm fine. But I will tell you.
So this is definitely an illustration of
Right as
Timothy
rain.
Treadwell's kind of increasingly unrealistic view of what the bears are. I think when he first started going out there, it was more so a fascination from a distance. These are majestic beasts. But what he started to do was escalate from that emotional distance into an increasing degree of emotional involvement, which for the most part, I think was a drama in his own head, that he was friends with the bears and that he
Of course
knew
it
the language
was.
of the bears. Now, likely he did pick up certain types of survival behaviors in terms of like how to know when one was about to charge, but he combines that with this kind of personality based view of the bears, that this one's grumpy, for example. So in the same way that you might escalate with an addiction, Timothy Treadwell seemed to escalate in terms of his involvement with the bear.
And speaking of addiction, again, the addiction is shown through his sun and moon opposing Neptune in Scorpio. So later on in this documentary, it comes up that he used to be addicted to heroin and alcohol. Like he used to binge drink. I think he overdosed on heroin a few times. So once he got clean, he just replaced those addictions with the addiction, to the bears. And that ultimately sealed his fate of dying at the hands of the bears. But again, he did it to himself. Oh man, I'm almost done this puzzle. So I only got one letter to fill in before I complete this puzzle. But basically, you get the gist of it. Let me see if I missed anything in particular that I wanted to mention about his chart. So basically, what really did him in was this T-square that consists of that opposition between his sun, moon, and Taurus, opposing Neptune and Scorpio, and then his sun and moon and Taurus squaring Uranus and Leo, and then Uranus and Leo squaring Neptune and Scorpio. So that T-square is basically what sealed his fate, what did him in, him putting himself in danger, and then also, like I said, with Chiron and Aquarius squaring his nodes, he was basically feeling indifferent towards danger and death. He felt like he was impervious to death. And also the whole theme of him not respecting nature. And again, remember, Jupiter and Virgo causing him to be very meddlesome. Mars squaring Jupiter, him feeling like he's better than what he is, being overly confident. thinking too highly of himself, going overboard, lacking self-restraint. 17 across. Oh, so this must be woo, right? Oh. All right, 8 down. Like films for mature audiences, rated R. So that concludes this crossword puzzle. So hopefully you enjoyed this one. I'll be doing, a variety of different Astro crossword videos where sometimes I'll be talking about somebody's chart. Other times I might just be scrolling through Instagram and talking about what I'm seeing and stuff like that. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comment section. Let me know if you ever heard about this story about Tim Treadwell in the Bears. And I think his name is very telling, Treadwell. Well, obviously, he didn't tread well. He didn't tread carefully into bear country, which resulted in the loss of his life. But I don't feel sorry for him because I'm like, hey, he fucked around and found out. All right, so stay tuned for some more videos. If you would like a reading, you can go to my website. The link is in the description section. Peace.